and roll of the committee members, and just say present or here when I call your name so it's for the record. So Chairman Brown of the General Committee.
I'm here.
Thank you. Chairman Cunningham of Finance.
Now you're live.
I saw your lips move, so I know you're here. So, all right. Chairman Campbell of the Safety Committee.
Here.
And Chairman Skidmore of the Public Works Committee.
I'm here.
All right, great. Thank you for everyone being here. We have 100% attendance. We also have several staff members that are here. And Mr. Bradley, I asked Mr. Bradley to be here for some preliminary comments. But first of all, let's see if there's any old business. And Chairman Campbell, since you were the past chair of the capital projects, do you know of any old business that we need to take care of tonight?
No, sir. Just carrying on with all the programs we have in place that are moving forward. Some moving at the speed of a snail, but hey, they're moving forward. So yes, sir. We're good.
Good. Thank you. I did ask Mr. Bradley here tonight, probably more for my benefit and maybe some of the new board members that may be on the line, to kind of briefly go over the jurisdictions and the responsibilities of the Capital Projects Committee. So John, could you give us a brief report just so that if nothing else for myself, that I understand the scope and the responsibilities of our committee?
Yes, let me just a little bit about the history of this. The city, as you know, changed its form of government in 1987. So from the first couple of years, there are a lot of things that had not been in place previously that sort of had to be developed. And this was one of them. The board at that time authorized the construction of the golf course. Everyone's familiar now with Country Hills Golf Course, but back in the late 1980s, there was a real problem with the golf course because we had not accounted for the fact that there was rock out in that area. And we had a $900,000 cost overrun on that project. As a result of that, the board decided that, and some other things, that maybe we needed to have some sort of a policy where several people were overseeing large projects such as the golf course. And so that's why this Capital Projects Committee was established. You know, we always had the other four standing committees. And in many ways, the five committees, including capital projects, they all are similar in that each one of them within their own jurisdiction makes recommendations to the full board. And none of our committees have the authority to take any final action per se on their own, but they can make recommendations to the board, which of course all of the committees do that on a regular basis. But the Capital Projects Committee, by ordinance, their responsibility, and I'll just read this to you so that way I know I get it right: monitoring of all phases of capital building projects within the city, including proper documentation, contract compliance, necessary professional and technical assistance, site selection, including application of proper criteria with respect to testing and consideration of alternative sites, as well as cost-benefit analysis, and prompt reporting to the board as to the progress and cost of particular projects. So another part of this was because capital projects sort of spans several areas of the city and several departments. I mean, every department might at some time have a capital project, just about every department. Certainly parks and fire and police and public works, so many of those have these projects. At one time, the monetary threshold was smaller, but what we've done now is the most recent amendment that was made changed the amount of money involved on a project to involve the Capital Projects Committee to be $250,000, as that's sort of the minimum cost. So if you've got $100,000 improvement to the tennis courts or something like that, that's not something that would need to be the concern of the Capital Projects Committee. But of course, something like the new fire hall that we're about to build, or the other projects that we're involved in that involve so much more money, this committee is involved in that. And another part of the establishment of the committee was to sort of cover the broad spectrum of the city. So the way we did it, we set it up so that the chairman of the 4 standing committees, which are here now, the 4 standing committees, Public Works, Public Safety, Finance, and General, they're automatically on this Capital Projects Committee. And then the board, at their first meeting after an election, elects one of the members of the board to serve on the Capital Projects Committee. So we have a total of 5 people on the Capital Projects Committee out of the 12 members, 12 aldermen on the board, plus, of course, the mayor. And the mayor is an ex officio member of the Capital Projects Committee. So we've got a pretty broad coverage. So even though the Capital Projects Committee is only making recommendations, you've got so many board members involved that typically a recommendation of the Capital Projects Committee is going to happen. It's something that's going to have the support of the board. So that's sort of the history of it. We have an entire policy dealing with capital projects. It's in the municipal code, and you can always look at this later, but it's chapter 9. And in chapter 9 is the capital projects policy. And this is something that's been adopted and modified over the years. It assigns the public works director to be in charge of these capital projects. That he is by ordinance responsible. He is the capital projects manager. That's the public works director. And of course, he's involved with all those aspects of construction that I mentioned earlier, plus the nuts and bolts details of whether a pay request is proper and whether things are being done according to the plans in a more detailed level than this committee could ever be, because he's there on a day-to-day basis. And I assume this was discussed in the previous meeting, but that Mr. Boyd, the Public Works Director, is not able to be with us tonight because of an illness in his family with his father-in-law. And so we've got Miss Sarah Locke with us, taking his place. So you probably have some questions for Sarah before the night is over. But while I'm talking, I'll just say one more thing that I did talk to Marshall about today. And that is the contract that we have with the consultants, the architects, for the design of our new fire hall. The new fire hall that we just borrowed the money with the capital outlay, with the bond money to build. And he has been in touch with our consultants, the architectural firm, and we've gone back and forth with the contract for that. Of course, so many of these places like to, absolve themselves of any culpability or liability, and I always try to stop that in these agreements. So we've gone back and forth on some of those things, but Mr. Marshall told me this afternoon that he thinks we can have an final agreement ready for signature by the mayor within the next week. So he and I are going to meet some more about that and try to hammer out the final details. I know that's something that's near and dear to Chief Bush. And so I wanted to put a shout out to you about his new fire hall. So that's sort of an overview of the committee and its purpose. Does anybody have any questions for me?
I don't believe so. Thank you, Mr. Bradley. And if you could hold on, I don't know if there'll be any questions as we proceed down the list of projects that we review, but thank you for that overview. It really helped me to understand the scope. So thank you. Thank you. The first item on the agenda is an update on the fire hall and the inline hockey rinks. And I don't know who from the staff is able to give that report. Is that you, Sarah, or is that Director Gilly or Chief Bush? So who's going to be the lead staff spokesperson to give us an update on those 2 capital projects?
Man, I can handle the hockey part. I can't do the fire hall.
And I can do the fire hall, but I don't want to talk about the hockey rinks until we get into the questions that we had earlier.
Okay. Does that sound reasonable? Let Chief Bush discuss the fire hall and Andy, the inline hockey.
Absolutely. That would be appropriate and the best source of information to give you exactly what you need.
All right, Chief Bush.
Mine's going to be short. Mine's going to be short and sweet because Mr. Bradley kind of told you everything that we were kind of waiting on. We've had some discussions back and forth with Wold HFR, who was the design folks that we chose through a committee that was composed of myself, Director Boyd, Mr. Story in codes, and then Mr. Free in planning. And we chose that company. We've been in several conversations. We've met 2 or 3 times. We have kind of designed in our minds what the station is going to look like. And the contract is kind of the piece that they're waiting on. I hate that Marshall's having a family emergency. I certainly understand that. And what Mr. Bradley just told you, once that's gotten back to Wold HFR, then they're going to start moving forward with the process. The way it was explained to me, and Mr. Free is on here, he was in that meeting. They were looking at going out for a GC at the end of February, possibly March. So I don't think anything that's come up with Marshall personally will slow this down. We just want to make sure that contract keeps moving through, and Mr. Bradley just confirmed that. So I think that's kind of where we're at with Station 7. But all the conversations and everything and where we're at right now has been very, very positive. And I can tell you on our behalf and for the entire city, especially Ward 6, we're really looking forward to getting that project off and open and getting it running.
Questions for Chief Bush? I have one, Chief. Are you confident in your discussions thus far that we can keep this project on budget?
Yes, sir. I certainly hope so. I mean, we kind of have told the architects what kind of money we had to spend. We've already made some concessions on the front end based off conversations with them that they told us, expenses were going to go past that $2.5 million. And saying that we wanted a 3-bay station, we're going to reduce that to 2 to save money and keep it under budget. And then we're going to have a blowout wall on that second bay side that we can come back at a later date and add another bay if we so choose as a city. We certainly can use the space, but right now we got a certain amount of funds to use, and we certainly are planning on staying within those boundaries.
Do you know if the county is planning to put a ambulance service at this station?
I offered it to them. They had recently put one out at Shackle Island Fire, which is of course on Long Hollow Pike, because of the call volume. So I do not know. I have not heard back from them. They were supposed to do their research. So to my opinion right now is no, they're not going to put one out there. They have not been part of the discussion, but we certainly feel like a 2-bay station is still needed in that location just because of the storage areas that we need for some of our other trailers and equipment.
And have there been any additional discussions with the county as far as finance?
Yes, sir. They're still on point to bring that up in this upcoming budget year. Now, whether that's going to be a lump sum or a 5-year plan, that's between the county members and the members of BOMA. As far as what you decide, I don't know if that's going to be, if they're going to come to the table with 700,000, or the last discussion that we had was they were going to try to get it approved to pay the entire 2.5 million.
Okay. Chairman Cunningham.
Thank you, Chairman Roberson. Scotty, to Eddie's point, I have a few questions. If we move ahead with if the county just moves ahead and we move ahead with so much of a joint effort to not only fund the fire, for them to either partially or totally fund our fire hall, and we in turn take over some responsibilities of areas that the Shackle Island Fire Department is now covering, will that involve additional personnel that we're going to need or additional equipment that we're going to need in the new fire hall? And then on a follow-up question, will we have the capacity to add a 3rd bay there like we did added a bay on Fire Hall 5 on Forest Retreat?
Okay, so let me kind of dissect that piece by piece, and you stop me if I don't cover everything you just asked. In saying that, the county has submitted through their legal a document to myself and Mr. Bradley and the mayor for us to review. They called it a mutual aid agreement. I simply do not want to call it a mutual aid agreement. I would like to refer to it as an automatic aid agreement. The difference in being mutual aid is you have to call for the help. An automatic aid would be if, let's say, Shackle Island had a house fire and they needed backup like they do 99% of the time. they automatically call for us. We know that we're going. That would help us substantially with our ISO rating, where a mutual aid agreement would possibly not help us so much with our ISO rating. So that's one change that I would like to see made on that. And as far as the recommendations for that, until we get to that point, the mayor's had a chance to review the contract. I think Mr. Bradley has too. And we have not really sat down and said kind of what we would like to see ironed out in that. The second part of that is, yes, they are wanting us to expand our response territory, but that goes into the agreement as well. But I think it's only, in my opinion, for severe car wrecks, MVAs where there is entrapment, which we would go to anyway. We do on a regular basis with them now at no charge to them. And then also with house fires, which again, that automatic aid agreement would cover that. And that's part of the agreement that they're wanting to do with helping fund this. Now, what I do not want to happen is us to get called out for a lift assist at 2 o'clock in the morning and take away from the taxpayers of the city of Hendersonville where it affects our coverage area. We want them to take care of their own medical calls. I don't think we need to be taking care of their medical calls. Typically what happens right now is if they dispatch Shackle Island on the medical call, if they have no response from their volunteers, they can reach out to other agencies to help with that. But I think that's based on the severity of the call. It's not just a lift assist. It may be like a CPR in progress call or an unresponsive call, something like that. And we certainly would be more apt to respond to that than something that's just a lift assist. And as far as the blowout wall, yes, ma'am, that was what I was saying. You might have been, maybe I didn't say it clear enough, or maybe got covered up by something, but we have reduced the station to a 2-bay station with the opportunity to have a blowout wall for future growth.
Okay. I missed that.
That's okay. Did I answer everything that you needed me to answer?
Well, are we going to, if we move forward with this program for the additional coverage, would that require additional personnel and or additional equipment?
It will not require additional equipment. We can leave or we can send half of our resources out of the city with either the interim CA's approval and or mayor's approval. I've always called them if we've sent more than one engine company out of the city. I always make them aware, even if we send one, but they have to be involved. If we send half of our resources out of the city, I have to let them know, and they have to make the final decision on that. And then as far as additional staff, we can always use more staff. And I will use this caveat. There is an opportunity right now that you're going to see in public safety coming up on the 9th. We have an opportunity to apply for a SAFER grant. We're looking at applying for one for 15 people, and it's 100% paid for 3 years. We don't have any match. We won't have any money out of our pockets for the first 3 years of that staff's employment. It's really, to me, it's a no-brainer. If we can get more firefighters on the ground, it's going to help our ISO rating, and not just, it will help it tremendously in the city, but it'll also help for response out of the city if we decide to go and expand our response territory. Yes.
So the SAFER grant will pretty much cover the personnel for the new fire hall for about a year or year and a half?
Yes, ma'am. Depending on when we start breaking ground on that,
Right.
How long it takes, depending on weather. But yes, ma'am. Depending on who comes to us, they may or may not have qualifications. If we usually put them through an in-house boot camp, if they meet our standards and we feel like they're capable of doing the job that we want through our department, we go ahead and put them on the companies in about 8 weeks. If they don't meet our standards, then we go ahead and send them back to the academy. And if we get some folks that are not trained to a certain level, we certainly send all of those folks to the academy. But we would have those folks ready in a matter of 10 weeks once the academy opened up.
And my very last question, I promise, Chairman
You're fine.
Roberson. My very last question is, what kind of contingency do we have built into the price? Because I remember the last go around, we had a problem with that.
So that's certainly going to have to be a discussion. Whether you're talking about 10%, which would be about $250,000. I planned on asking for that in the upcoming budget, whether we do half this year and half the following year, because the station really probably won't be done for 12 to 18 months realistically. and we're going to be in 2 budget cycles. So I was going to ask for that 250 either in one year's budget, or half now and half in next year's, or simply if the county agrees to pay the 2.5 million. If I'm not mistaken, Robert, you correct me if I'm wrong, we could take 250 out of what we have in the bond and use that for that 10%.
What 10% are we talking about? I'm very sorry.
Contingency money that you always have to have in case there's any change orders or anything like that.
I'll verify that, but I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to utilize that money. Typically, not everything gets so black and white as to list every single option, but I'll verify for you.
Okay.
Okay.
And okay, I know that I said that was my last one. This is my very last one. The fire truck, the fully equipped fire truck. Are we working on ordering that now, and are we coming in on budget with that?
Well, so we're about 11 months out. I talked to a rep today. If we decide to go back with the same apparatus that we did, thanks to Robert, we're able to use HGAC, which is simply a cooperative purchasing program. The manufacturer that we used last time is on there. It's significant savings when you use HGAC cooperative purchasing. So if they're on there, we certainly would try to plan on doing that versus an RFP. But we're in the process next week of getting an apparatus committee together, and we're going to, based off the 2 that we just did a couple of years ago, we're going to look and see if there's any modifications or adjustments we need to do, and we'll be ready to rock and roll. So maybe we can get that thing here about the same time that station is completed.
Okay. Thank you, Chief Bush. Thank you, Chairman Roberson.
Thank you, Chairman Cunningham. Any other questions for Chief Bush? I've got a couple more, Chief.
Yes, sir.
So it looks, I want to make sure that we're highly coordinated on our effort to build the fire station and also the inline hockey rinks. So is there a good amount of coordination going on between the departments? And maybe this is a question for Paul and the mayor's office, that we're all kind of singing off the same song, and that we're together on our approach at the county level.
So
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I think you were going to call on Mr. Harsmeyer. Go ahead.
Well, to answer that question, you're exactly right. When we look at projects of this magnitude and this much funding, I think it's incumbent upon us to have a good internal process, that we've got all the right players involved so we don't make mistakes, we don't overlook issues, and we make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's dotted. So we just had that discussion today in coordination with both of these projects, looking at how we can better have an internal process to make sure those things occur, and we're on track with that. And internal, I guess the best word, internal financial reviews to make sure we're not going over and we're keeping an eye on every aspect of the project. So the answer in short is yes, we're going to try to do exactly that and improve that process to make sure we don't miss anything.
Yeah, I just want us to provide to the county a unified position of the city. And so I trust that the staff is moving toward that we're together, on our negotiations with the county, and then to keep this board, this committee fully informed as we move forward. The last thing on coordination, Paul and Chief Bush and Director Gilley, is what did the BOMA do on the other capital projects as far as staff coordination? I know that I know that Marshall is going to be the project manager, but as far as making sure there's a dissemination of information and everyone's kind of kept in the loop, is there a staff coordinating committee that's maybe headed by Public Works Director, that everything is coordinated at the city level, Paul?
Yes, and that's kind of what I was leading to in that prior answer. That's exactly right. So the process needs to be, again, having the right team together in place so that we have all the subject matter experts for the public works and for the finance and for engineering, all those things need to come together. So yes, and I think that's the internal process, and we certainly want to convey that to the board on regular updates to make sure everybody's on the same page and there's no wondering what's going on. So we want to be upfront about that. Again, these projects are extremely critical to the infrastructure of the city. They're extremely costly, and it's worth our effort on the front end to do it right and make sure all those boxes are checked. So that's exactly what we're going to do, and we'll be glad to provide reports. I think that's informative because you need to be aware of that, and we need to be on top of that. So reporting is not an issue.
Okay, good. And Chairman Campbell, I have a question for you. What processes did this committee take as far as change orders that may significantly change the cost of the capital project? What precedent is there that we used as far as keeping a tab on those change orders?
Well, they would just come up, I mean, randomly whenever they need to come to the committee. The problem was trying to get the change orders properly funded, having that contingency fund sitting there, the $250,000 we're talking about. And I think right out of the gate, you need to have that money sitting there because things are going to happen. You're going to realize you need to build a wall someplace you did not realize when you started the project. You're going to need to change something, and it has to go through the contingency and change order. And that's just how that works. Now, back when we were doing the fire hall, number 2, I wish I could say it was a smooth process, but it wasn't. It was the leadership was when we'd ask for leadership guidance, we would get the words, "I'm not prepared to make a statement this time." Well, we never could get a statement. So we were, working together, and I agree. We need to work as a team effort here. And now we have a CA in place for the moment. Eventually, it will be a COO, and hopefully that little bit of buffer there will allow us to move forward as a team effort, because we really do need that group working together. I mean, at one time, Marshall was talking about handing all future projects like this back to the particular department that it impacted, like fire hall goes to the fire department. Police department would be working on their own police department. And I said, no. They're not engineers. They don't understand the construction process. It needs to be staying in public works, and we need to have our employees there handling it. And maybe we need to look at maybe a purchasing agent who can oversee those projects. And there would also be maybe a grant writer, a purchasing agent / grant writer to help us move forward in those departments where you making sure your contracts are being followed. And like this HGHC purchasing process, that would be something that a purchasing agent would be able to oversee as well. But as far as a contingency or a fund or an effort to have a contingency in place, how to handle it, there's really, and when they happen, they happen. You just have to deal with them at that time. There's really no, well, we can't do that because of this. Well, it might stop that whole project until you get it addressed. So the faster you can address contingency issues, the better off you're going to be. Change orders. That'd be my opinion, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Paul, I think as chair, I would like to be notified of any change order of $1,000 or more. So I'd like to use the number $1,000, and I'll share with the committee as soon as I get those reports so that we're aware of any change orders. And I understand, Chairman Campbell, the change orders that may be necessitated by construction issues that weren't anticipated, but change orders of things that we hadn't thought of that we'd like to have. I hope that Chief Bush and Director Gilley will really understand the need to hold the line on a lot of change orders, and I know they will. So, okay, that's
I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Cunningham.
Thank you, Chairman Roberson. Also, Robert is going to be has supplied me in the past with the fire hall, and I'll ask for, at a regular scheduled finance meeting, where we are with each of the 2 huge, large projects that we have going on, what we have budgeted, what we have spent, what's expected, any kind of, surprises, so to speak, so we can keep track of that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh,
That'll be part of my report to Chairman Roberson.
okay.
And if I could just add to that, if that's okay.
Yes.
So if I can just add to that, so before that, I did clearly understand the directive on the change orders over 1,000. So I'll make sure I acknowledge that to you that we'll do that. And also to follow up on that process, we part of the conversation today was exactly that, an internal process where we're looking at that exact topic of financial review, knowing where we are at every step of the way with the starting balance in the fund, what's been expended, where we are today. As work orders come in, invoices come in, we know exactly where we are real time, so we don't overcommit. So that is part of the discussion we just had today, and I'm happy to report I think we've got a good handle on it, and it will be beneficial to everyone involved to have that process so it's clearly understood where we are at any given time.
Thank you. Chief
Thank you.
Bush. Chief Bush.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I just want to reiterate too, and Keith's on here. I know Greg's not, and of course Marshall's not for unexpected reasons, but Wold HFR made a promise to us once we sat down in their first discussion that they will meet with us weekly once this project gets off the ground at the site. I will say with the previous building, not saying anything negative about anybody, we went through 2 or 3 project managers that left or was not living up to the standards of the developer or contractor. So I think a lot of breakdown was that, and I have made a vow to myself and my staff that once this thing we start throwing concrete and block, we are going to take a more active role on being out there every day. I don't care. It doesn't have to be me. I'm going to assign somebody from fire prevention that's going to be out there if it's not me or my assistant chief. And we're going to be out there on a regular basis to make sure that we don't have any issues like we've had in the past. And I make that vow to you now as well, that I will live through that and make sure that we have somebody on site on a regular basis. And I can certainly report back either to the COO, CA, whoever it may be, the mayor, and give them a report so they can report back to y'all, or if they want me to report to everybody at once, I already have those measures in place. So we're going to do our best to make sure that we stay within the boundaries.
Great. Thank you. Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. I want to make sure I was clear on something that, and I think I am, but when $1,000 change order comes in, you want to be notified, and I think that's good. And of course, Mr. Hobsmar or whoever's in that seat at that time will be notified, and I don't like everybody being notified, but I don't want $1,000 change order to hold up progress on that building, where it has to go back to this committee so we can look at it so it can go back to get done. Because there's going to be some change orders, and some of those are going to be needed to be expedited in order for that process or wherever they're at in building that building to go on. So, see, am I right on my understanding on that we'll go ahead and do the change, but you want to be notified so you can notify the committee? And I would just assume that if it's a large change order, $15,000, $20,000, then Marshall, who will be back by that time, will be working with Mr. Hobsmar or whoever's sitting in that seat to make sure that gets communicated down. I just don't want progress on the building to be stopped because of $1,000 or $2,000 change order. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. And all I want to be is notified of that so that we can kind of keep a tab on the changes in the cost of it. So I'm not requiring action by the committee, but just notification.
And just to confirm, that's what I understood, and that's what we'll do. Yeah, that was my understanding as well.
It's just part of the oversight responsibility of this committee. Yeah. Mr. Free.
Yes, Chairman, I'll echo what Chief Bush was talking about in working with the consultant, that's the architect that's going to be doing the design and everything. One of the things that we determined early on in that selection process was that, of course, the Public Works Director will be the lead person that'll be overseeing this, but that every 2 weeks, probably at least, in the middle of this construction, the Chief Bush, myself, Greg Story, our codes director, and Marshall Boyd, our public works director, will all four of us be meeting and probably going to the site quite a bit to keep a very close eye on it. So there'll be all four of us that'll be involved in watching this process.
Great, thank you. If there are no other questions on the fire hall, we'll move to the inline hockey rinks. And Mr. Gilly, Director Gilly, would you like to lead the discussion there?
Yes, sir, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hockey rink update would be, we have selected Olympian Construction to build the facility. They were the low bidder, and we thought lowest and best. We have signed the agreement, the mayor signed, and we've gotten an agreement for construction and admin to Lowe's Design. John Sexton, I think, is on the call. John was also the architect and designer that got us the construction documents. So this is a little different than other projects in the past. We actually had the exact construction documents before we went out to bid, which makes me feel better about the accuracy of the price. And I think that was reflected in how the bids came in. We met today with Mr. Harbsmeyer, myself, Robert, and the mayor, talking about things that you all have already discussed here at length in terms of who needs to be at the table when we have these weekly, bi-weekly, monthly meetings, internal processes as far as management, processing payment, different things. It's very, very similar to the way that after I came on board and at the end of Mr. Lamar's interim term as the parks director before I got involved full time. Those are the exact similar process to what was going on with the volunteer park concession stand, which was helpful at the end. Once we actually did figure out what the project entailed, we were able to keep it at the price we needed it to. I anticipate our next step will be to get with Lowe's and Olympian and get a final contract with them for exactly what will be our responsibilities and Olympians in the project. There are a couple of things, as Chief Bush mentioned, that we can utilize the Sourcewell purchasing program for, and also with the asphalt portion of the project, our rate with the Rogers Group.
So will that special rate with the Rogers Group on asphalt, will that lower Olympia's bid price on the project?
What we would end up doing would be having to actually take that out of the contract and paying Rogers Group would bill us directly, but Olympian would still coordinate with Rogers Group, obviously, as that portion was being done. According to Marshall, we should realize savings off of that. The only caveat would be there is a fine. I'm not a construction asphalt person, but there is a fineness, a grade of that different kinds of asphalt, and Rogers Group's ability to provide that. I think John Sexton could speak to that better than I could if you need him to.
So, Mr. Gilly, the bid from Olympic was it 2.8 million?
2.825, I believe. And
the bond we authorized, I think, was 2.6 for the project. So how are we going to pay for the difference in that?
We currently have about $295,000 in insurance money still left in that account. So we will take out the cost for construction admin, which is around 20, and then we will have that insurance amount to cover the rest of the project.
Okay. And my other question is, what about Mary's Magical Place? When are we going? I mean, I know that spring rains are going to be starting. Maybe they've already started, but
yes, sir.
When are we going to be starting to do excavation to try to protect Mary's Magical Place?
So our plan there is we will feel good about starting there as soon as we know we have an accurate timeline of exactly when the project at Volunteer will be done, so that we know the hockey league will be able to have their season. So if it's July and everything is running on schedule and we look good to be able to have the hockey season start when it's supposed to this fall, then we'll be ready to go to work at Mary's Place. If that's June, if that's April, May, whenever that is.
So
And
we
that
just
could,
put-
you know, and in the hockey, as long as they've got rinks at Volunteer Park, if we're done with construction and we know we're going to be on time for their season, we will start at Mary's Place as soon as possible. The hockey season here will end at the beginning of May.
Okay.
In the spring. So we really can't dig that up till they get finished.
Okay. Any questions for Director Gilly? Chairman Cunningham?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Roberson. Andy, what kind of I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Scotty. What kind of contingency do we have built into the price?
So we have not seen the line by line contract with Olympian at this point. What I can tell you, and John can probably speak to this, when I asked for the amount of money I asked for, his cost estimate that I gave you all copies of, it had built into that cost estimate contingency money. The exact amount I do not have in front of me, but also this will have insurance money, 30, 40,000 over and above what the contract price will be. We should realize savings from the Rogers Group price as well. So that's where I'm at on contingency.
Okay, I don't remember exactly what the amount was, but I remember there was a separate line item on that
Yes, ma'am.
contract that you originally showed us. And ETA for it to be done is an unknown right now until they get started.
6 to 7 months construction process. So as soon as we can get together and get things hammered out and get going, from that point, 6 to 7 months, hopefully less. At this point, it could depend on delivery of products. We want to order the structures and the rinks as quickly as we can to get them in production. There's nobody knows with construction right now. A lot of things are taking longer to be delivered, but hopefully not. I will say this, both the major parts of the project, in terms of, we've got 3 major parts. We've got asphalt, we've got the rinks, and we've got the overhead structure. All the companies that we know we're going to use have been involved in this bidding process from the beginning in terms of providing estimates. So that they're ready to go. It's just a matter of us giving them the green light.
Thank you, Chairman Roberson. Thank you, Director Gilly.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have one last question, but I don't want to overlook any alderman that has a question regarding the inline rinks and Mary's Magical Place. And this may be a question, my last question for Mr. Sexton. He's the architect, I believe, of this project. And Mr. Sexton, I've looked over the cost estimates for the inline hockey rinks, and I noticed that there is quite a big expenditure for a water main to be run from the end of the main now, which is at the soccer fields, all the way up to the 8-inch main at the school. And I think, if I'm right, that the cost for that is a little over $100,000. And so, John, Mr. Sexton, are you on the call?
I am, yes, sir.
Yeah. So I'd like to ask a little bit about that. And I know I've asked Mr. Varble to also be on the call, because I think it has something to do with fire protection service. But that number jumped out at me, of running this main, over $100,000. And I guess as a good someone that's watching the city money, is that actually necessary? And is there another option to try to save $100,000 on this project for that particular aspect of it? So, Mr. Sexton, you want to respond to that?
Sure, I can. So, Lowe's Design and myself worked real close with Paul Varble and his team to come up with the most cost efficient method to protect the building and ensure that we get a occupancy letter, when the project is completed. And to do that, we had to make sure that we met the IBC and IFC, which, they stand for International Building Code and International Fire Code, as well as the Life Safety Code, to do that. And in order to ensure that we meet all those codes and get an occupancy, we had to provide a specific flow of water from that fire hydrant to protect the building. This is extremely less expensive than actually sprinkling the building, but we had to make sure that we got that that water flow to the building, the gallons per minute and the PSI to make sure that we protected that building. When we designed the building, currently we didn't have that flow at those fire hydrants, and we had to extend the line all the way to the hydrant next to Knox DOS to get those that GPM and that PSI to ensure that we had enough to protect that building in the end.
Okay, Mr. Varble, what are the standards as far as gallons per minute and the static PSI and also the residual PSI that's required to meet the standards, the fire safety standards?
So the minimum.
Can I excuse me just for a second? Can Tina, can you share what I sent you, the same stuff that I sent Mr. Roberson, so everyone can see it? Is that possible, please, Tina? I know it's last minute that I sent it to you. Perfect. And this may help as we're discussing this. Can you, I'm sorry for the dogs in the background. If you can you swell that up a little bit, make it grow a little bit, please, Tina?
Should I leave it on the first page?
Yes, ma'am, just the first page. So if you see the part there that's highlighted in red, the total project size is 57,000 square feet. And in saying that, then you go to page 2, please, Tina. By the IBC and the IFC, it is considered a non-combustible membrane structure, and it shall be classified as a 2B type construction. And this is all in the International Fire Code. Tina, would you mind going to page 3, please? And if I'm going too fast, somebody please stop me. But as you go down, then it talks about buildings other than 1- and 2-story family dwellings, considered group, I think that's R3 with my poor vision, and R4 buildings and townhomes, which that is not applicable to this, but it certainly rolls back into the next page.
Yeah, so that means anything other than a 1- and 2-family home. That's what this is just defining.
Correct. So this is any structure that's not a 1- or 2-family dwelling, just like the fire marshal said. Thank you, Paul. If you'll go to the next page, please, Tina. Then we start talking about, this section refers to all buildings that are not 1- and 2-story family dwellings, and we refer to the gallons per minute requirements, minimum fire flow and duration requirements. If you'll see, there's 2 areas that are highlighted. As I spoke on the very front end, it's a 50,000 or 57,000 square feet structure. We are supposed to have 5,000 gallons per minute that's available for fire suppression activities out there. Currently, there is only 1 hydrant out there, and it's an approximately a 800 gallon per minute hydrant. We understand, and we certainly are trying to do the best that we can to work with Andy and Mr. Sexton. So we recognize that it's somewhat of a non-combustible type building. So we have just placed upon them the minimum requirements of 1,500 gallons per minute, which is the second number at the very top of the page. So we're not holding them to the maximum at 5,000. We actually have reduced it to the 1,500 gallons per minute, which is still somewhat of a savings. And as I spoke earlier with you, Mr. Roberson, we certainly would like to try to be consistent with what we're having other folks do. And then we don't want to not do it ourselves, if that makes sense to everyone.
So I guess my question is, did you look at any other options to be able to get the proper volumes and pounds per square inch. Is this the only option, this expenditure, in order to achieve those requirements?
So I'll let Paul speak to that because he was part of the, all the conversations. I'll let him speak to that, please.
Yeah, and if I can speak to that, and John, jump in anytime if I make a mistake. But yes, sir, Mr. Roberson, we did. There's a water line that runs down Drake's Creek, and it's closer, but that is a 6-inch line, so it wouldn't give us the volumes or the pressures that we needed. So we did look at all the surrounding properties and see where our closest water line was that would give us the volume and the pressure. And from my understanding from the engineers, the closest they could find was back where they made their show the connection now. But if we went closer to New Shackle or Drake's Creek, the water line size out there is just not large enough to be able to even get us this bare minimum. Is that correct?
Yeah, and even some kind of, I don't know what the terminology, but some kind of booster pump or anything wouldn't improve the pressure on that 6-inch. I mean, you need what, a minimum of an 8-inch line to get the volumes that you need.
Yeah, pumps only give you pressure. They don't give you volume. We're having a volume problem.
Okay.
And we also looked to sprinkle the building as well, but that was going to be exponentially more costly than actually providing a line from a Knox DOS hydrant all the way to our property. So we go through multiple options with Mr. Varble to make sure that we were providing the least expensive and cost-efficient method to provide service.
Yeah, and I did see an email, Mr. Sexton, that I guess your company did a test on that fire hydrant, and it was the maximum gallons per minute, I think, was 1,200, 1190 to 1,200. So it doesn't look like it meets the 1,500. Okay, well, I think I'm satisfied. I just feel a responsibility anytime that there looks like a category that maybe we need a little discussion. So I appreciate Chief Bush, you and Paul's explanation of that. Any other questions regarding this before we move on?
If I can interrupt just for a second, I want to give a big props to Tina for the last minute ability to let me put that in front of everybody because I didn't have a chance to share it to everybody who was going to be here. So thank you, Tina, for always pulling us out in the clutch.
That helps. Andy, any other comments regarding the inline rinks?
No, sir, not necessarily on these rinks. Going back to what y'all were talking about earlier, notifying capital projects committee of different things. If I remember correctly, there was legislation Mr. Woodcock passed that did set a certain threshold for something to have to come back to the public capital projects committee before it could be agreed to. It's a pretty high number. I don't remember what it was. That's different from what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. We got $1,000. You just want to make sure you know about it. But there also was a pretty good protection put in that I think everybody agreed to that would help us all. I don't remember if it was 10% or if it was a dollar amount. Somebody would have to look all that up.
It was a dollar amount.
Mr. Bradley, if you're still on the call, could you find that ordinance or resolution and let us know?
Yeah, I think what he's remembering is Mr. Woodcock, he sponsored legislation to change the amount of the project that the capital projects committee would have jurisdiction over to be $250,000. I think previously it was $50,000. I don't believe there was ever any legislation dealing with change orders.
I do think there was something where
yes, there was.
If it was going to go over,
it's not in the ordinance. There may have been some sort of resolution, but it's not in our ordinance.
I got you. There was something where if it looked like a project was going to go over by a certain amount, we had to get approval from capital projects committee.
Yeah.
And Mr. Gilly, if you can try to find that, or maybe Chairman Cunningham can get that. Yeah, Chairman Cunningham.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Roberson. Yes, there was, I can't remember if it was an ordinance or resolution. I believe it was some type of resolution. If there was an overrun of a project, because we were never notified about the overrun on two huge projects in the city, namely the volunteer park area and also Wessington. It went over, it was well over the projected amount by hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on both of them. And the committee was
Correct.
never notified. We never approved anything. And it just went, we just spent the money. And so, yeah, Alderman Woodcock did present that, and it was I believe it was almost certain it was a dollar amount versus a percentage, but I could be wrong about that. But there is something on the books. I'll try to, I don't know if I can, if Erica could maybe look it up, or Mark,
Yeah,
if you
I'll get it.
remember that, or.
Yeah, I remember.
We'll find it tomorrow. We'll find it tomorrow. It's not an order. It may have been a resolution, but we'll look it up.
Could be, yeah. It happened several years ago, so I can't be certain.
Right. Great. Good discussion. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, let's move on, and I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to talk about the approved capital projects update. Since Marshall is not here, Sarah, please proceed.
Okay, so I've not done this before. So does he just go through and identify? Do you identify the project, or I go through?
Yeah, just
Okay.
go through each project and just give a brief statement, and then after each one, we'll see if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you. So first we have our TMSI, which is our traffic management project. Some of you that have been around for a while, I'm sure you realize this has already been out to bid for construction twice. And we had some issues identified through TDOT. So we had some survey completed to clarify those issues, and our consultants are finalizing those plans now. We anticipate being able to resubmit those to TDOT 3 to 4 weeks, hopefully less. And then once those are approved, we'll be able to re-advertise for construction bids once again. Does anyone have any questions about that one?
Is this the light synchronization that you're talking about, right?
Yes, it has been known as that. Yes.
That's what we're all wanting to see as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So any way that the staff could try to rush that along, because I know that with the traffic volumes, we really need some better coordination of our lights. Chairman Campbell.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That project started before I became an alderman 7 years ago. So here we are, still dealing with TDOT, trying to work out. We had approval, and then when they backed up, got some new people in there, they went back to the paperwork and said, wait a minute, we've got to go back. So as we took a step forward, we took 2 steps backwards. So let's prayerfully think to get through this process and get this project done. Thank you.
And this is 100% being paid by the state, correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
Yes.
Okay. Alderman Collins.
Sarah, I'm just wondering what's the best case and worst case scenario for timing for this to be complete? Or is it too soon to say?
It's a difficult question to answer because, like I said, it's already been put out to bid for construction twice. I honestly can't even answer what the worst case could be. I feel like we are nearing completion to it. I think we're addressing these final concerns that they have. Maybe John has something else to add to that.
Yes, this has been an ongoing project for many years, as we've discussed. But what happened within the last couple of years is we were ready to move forward with this project. And we had some work done by some consultants that showed on their plans that some of our structures along Gallatin Road were not within an easement. They were,
Right.
for example, they might have been to side a City Square shopping center, but there was never a formal easement. Probably the developer was the owner at the time. But there were several of these. I think there were 7 or 8. I know it's probably driven Sarah crazy dealing with this. It's certainly all of us have. But TDOT refused to let us move forward until we could prove ownership of those. And they weren't convinced that the 1-year statute of limitations that's in the law in Tennessee was good enough. They wanted us to show that We had followed the federal government highway process for acquisition of roadway right away, and we have just had delay after delay because of this, even though there's absolutely no question that all these structures are ours and that the property they're on, we have the right to be there. So that's what's led to this last go round with more consultants and more surveying work. So I know it's frustrating, and I went round and round with TDOT about this and their legal department. And I asked them finally, I said, well, if we file suit and got a declaratory judgment in Sumner County that this is our property, would that be good enough? And their general counsel said, no, we want to see that you followed the federal process just in case we're ever audited by the federal government. And that, Mr. Chairman, is where we are.
And some of those projects are 30 years old. Some of those pieces of property are 30 years old on the books.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Alderman
worst
Collins.
plan, the best plan scenario, Sarah, 3 to 4 weeks before getting it to the state, how long would you anticipate the state taking to approve that?
At least a month. It'll
Okay.
take them at least a month to
Then
review.
we put it out for bid, and how long is the bidding process?
Typically 2 months. I will say we have, our contract was about to expire with TDOT again on this project. And so the mayor just signed, I think it was maybe a week or 2 ago, he signed an extension for this project. So as of now, and TDOT has signed it, we are set to complete this project by May 2022, including the fully constructed. So I think that's probably our best case for construction.
That would be best case, Mr. Chairman. The problem we've got is we've still got the people at TDOT that wants to prove ownership of these structures. So at some point, we're either going to have to condemn them, which would be condemning property we already own, which is crazy, or we're going to have to purchase them, which means going through appraisals and a purchasing procedure. So that's the part that we don't have any idea how long that's going to take. And that's what the consultants are working with us on, doing all this surveying to try to establish who we've got to get permission from. So I like the best case scenario, but the worst case scenario, none of us want to talk about that.
Yeah.
It's impossible to determine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this project? If not, Sarah, the second project.
Okay. The next is our Sanders Ferry multi-use path project. The staff consultants are working with TDEC to renew the environmental permits. And once that is complete and those are reissued, then they'll move toward submitting to TDOT for final review or bidding for construction.
And what portion of the city's responsibility for cost on that project?
I apologize. I have not been involved in that project before this update, so I am not familiar with the costs associated.
Okay, I'll find that out from Marshall or Chairman Campbell. Do you know?
I want to say 90-10. That project also started before I became an alderman. Matter of fact, Alderman West told me she wanted to see that she wanted to step down once that project was completed. But this would be her 4th term. So there you go. Gives you an idea of the time frame on these projects. Thank you.
All right. I'll find out because I would like to know just for my records what portion of city responsibility is on those costs. Number 3, Sarah.
All right. Number 3 is the Saundersville LIC local interstate connector. The consultant is in the process of revising those plans based on comments from CSX, and those will be submitted to TDOT for right-of-way approval. And then, of course, once approved by TDOT, we'll move forward with acquiring the right-of-way necessary for that project.
And as of right now, we don't have any grants or any help on paying for that. Is that correct?
That's correct. I know that I believe the consultants have been working with us to apply for, I believe, 2 grants on our behalf, but I'm not sure that we've heard back on those yet.
Yeah, federal grants, I believe you're referring to.
Yeah.
And you last estimate of this project? Do you know what the cost was on that? Seemed like 12 million is jumping out at me, but
That's
It's
exactly
12.
what I was thinking.
12
Mhm,
million.
12 million. Yes, sir.
Okay. So the staff provided us some improvements on this intersection, like changing some lane and red light to try to make the flow better. Can you give us an update on that?
Through Saundersville? Oh, I'm sorry, for the exit 8, is that
Yes.
what you're? Okay,
Yes.
okay, yes. Yes, TDOT did approve for the city to go ahead and make that change. Typically, if it would go through their process, it would take even longer, but we are having a bit of a holdup because part of what they're requiring for this is they want advanced overhead notification signs notifying drivers of the lane assignments, because what will be changing is instead of having one left and one right dedicated lane, there will be one dedicated left and then one combination left right. And so in order to give people enough time to make decisions to minimize crashes, we have to provide overhead signage. And the contractor or the vendor that we typically use for our signs, they do not have the sheeting available to do signs large enough for those, the sizing required for the overhead signs. So we are working with TDOT's vendor, and I have not been successful in securing that quote yet because they have been having some sort of staffing issues. And so once we work through getting the signage, everything else will go very quickly. You may have noticed if you drive that way a lot, they've already put up the new signal head and they've just put a black bag over half of it. So that once it's ready to go, it'll be quick, but I have to have those signs in place.
I guess of all of the projects that I'm aware of, I see the danger of not taking some kind of action on this project with cars backing up. And I'm sure the alderman from Ward 5 will attest to this. So I want to think outside the box. Since $12 million to build a tunnel, did the city ever look at a bridge over instead of a tunnel underneath? And was it the cost difference that the tunnel was cheaper than the bridge?
It was a design option, and I think it was a cost that drove the decision. It was.
Chairman Campbell?
Yes, I remember that conversation. For a car to go over a bridge, they had to have a longer egress and degress type approach to it. There was not enough room there between the bypass and where the bridge would have to be located at to get that pitch, to get the angle that they needed to get over the height that the railroad was calling for. And then also on the opposite side, it would take up so much property on the other side to do that as well. That's one of the things that they're looked at, was just property cost was just cost prohibitive from what I understood. And that's when they started looking at boring under it. And I know that when they started looking at boring under it, we actually went out and got an approved construction company that has worked with CSX in the past to bore under railroad tracks and also bore under them while they're in operation. But here again, CSX holds the keys to this, and they tell us what to do. And they tell us that, no, we want you to put that 3,000 spur line to the north side or to the east side of the south side, east side of the property. The railroad track that is there now, they wants to put a 3,000 foot spur line. So we've got to come in and build that line, as well as while we're doing that. When we get through doing that, they'll direct traffic to that while we go and cut that other line apart, the underpass under it, and then come back to the original one. That's where the cost just went right to the roof. And here again, CSX, they had an approved design. Then someone new came into the picture and said, nope, let's do it this way. So we're at the mercy of whoever is in charge at that time to tell us what and how they want to do it, even after we get an approval saying we can do it this way. So
this is such an expensive project.
Yes, sir.
It's such a needed project. And I really don't know if we don't get some kind of federal or state grant, I don't know how we're going to pay for it. I mean, I know that it's got to be done, So Sarah, is there anything else can be done over the existing road path, like putting in an additional lane that can help temporarily the flow of traffic in that area? So instead of a 2-lane road over the railroad track, put in a 3-lane road, or just another lane to provide a better flow of traffic through that area.
To answer your question, I don't know that TDOT would even permit us, or that they would, I don't know that they would look favorably on that. There's been a lot of pressure from TDOT to move forward with this project, and to, I hate to say they've held up other projects. That's not exactly the case, but there was always the question, well, how about the LIC? Is that still moving? And the CS, I don't know as if they would allow us to improve the crossing when it's a dangerous crossing and they really want us to remove it. And as far as adding a lane on Saundersville, I don't know that that would really improve it either, simply because you have those 3 traffic signals that are much too close. And then you combine that when the train comes through. I don't know that the flow would be improved by an additional lane.
Chairman Cunningham?
I believe there was talk about putting an extra lane at one point, like they did with the exit 3 here on Centerpoint Road, where there is an extra lane that was actually going to be put on the bypass. And I thought TDOT had agreed to do that at one point, but now I don't even know where something like that stands, because this was in the very beginning of this whole process about, what, 5 years ago, or 4 or 5 years ago. And that would have definitely have relieved some of the pressure to get off of that bypass if we had, instead of just the 2 lanes, we had that 1 lane, like it is at Centerpoint Road. Are you familiar with that? I'm sure you're familiar with that, Sarah, and Chairman Roberson. And that's about, it has to be a mile long. But I don't know wherever that went. I mean, Pat, do you remember
There
that?
was talk about, yes, there was talk. That went back to when Ham Frost was on the board. And yes, that was a conversation that was being had at the time to alleviate the backup on the 386, because they were afraid of rear-end collisions that would happen of stop traffic on 386. The reason why the LIC and the underpass, TDOT, for whatever reason, wanted to tie them together. They wanted to move forward with the local interchange connector and the underpass. Once we started moving forward with the underpass, they actually didn't want to go back in and redesign the exit ramp until we had that. They said, we need to know exactly where the underpass is going to go under the train track before we'll agree to do the local interchange connector. Well, we are still waiting, and we will continue to wait, unfortunately, because we're dealing with CSX. And that is just, have to get you an act of Congress to even talk to them. So unfortunately, that's the way it works.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Robeson. Maybe you forgot me there for a second, but that's okay. What you're talking about, Ms. Cunningham, was a slip lane. They had agreed to put a slip lane coming in there.
That's correct.
So could make a right turn when they come out.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that went away when what Sarah was talking about a while ago came onto the table. We have left turn and a right turn. So I'm not sure, but I think that was planned, and when the other thing came on board, that went away, or at least it did in TDOT's mind. So a lot of things go away in TDOT's mind. I think. I do, Sarah, you're smiling. Maybe you shouldn't do it. I have a question. In the notes and what you said a minute ago, we've had to do revisions to present to TDOT again. CSX has recommended some revisions or something else they wanted done. Can you share? Do you know what those are, or can you share what those are?
I apologize. I'm not familiar with those. I've had limited exposure to this project, to be honest, but I can find out and get back with you on that.
could you find out and either get it to Chairman Robertson or just email it to everybody on here? Because I would be curious what those changes are that CSX wanted. CSX has changed several times, and TDOT has changed several times. What we were talking about a while ago in building this fire hall, maybe they should try that concept too, of getting everybody around the table at the same time and doing that on a weekly basis. That's probably asking too much. I know I sound sarcastic, but some of us are going to be long gone before that bypass that's ever done. And I like everybody on here would like to see it done, especially those folks in Ward 5, because I know the two down here in my lower left-hand corner, Mr. Hayes and Ms. Collins, put up a lot of heat for that. So it's definitely not your fault, that's for sure. The other thing I would like to ask is, you said that the sign vendor that we used didn't have the capability of giving us an overhead sign. And so we're trying to work with the TDOT vendor. Here would be, do you have an approximate cost on that sign? And is there another vendor other than the TDOT vendor that we could work with?
I do not have an
to get those 2 lanes done.
Yeah, I do not have an approximate cost. That's actually what I was requesting, was a quote, and then a quote so we could approve it to move forward. I have requested from the company that we use for our traffic signals, because they could possibly install those overhead posts. And they do, when they do these big projects, they source those signs. So I have requested information from them and a quote if they're willing to do that project, to see what it might cost, and if I have to put it out to bid, what that would be.
You want to give a wild guess? I won't hold you to it. 100,000?
I don't think so. No, I would say, I would think it's got to be less than 20,000. And I don't think it's that much, to be honest, but I'm not positive. I don't know.
I would just tell you, as part of this committee and part of the citizenry here, I would expedite that as fast as I could expedite it, because we know it's going to be a long time before that tunnel's built. They can talk. I mean, the bank is finally down around the corner here at Walton Ferry, and there's progress being made there, but I'm scared to death that they'll be so happy with their progress that they'll just quit again. It'll be a long time before that tunnel's built, but if we could certainly get that signage up and get those 2 lanes in there, it would relieve a lot of the problems in Ward 5 coming off. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Alderman Collins.
Sarah, I just want to tell you how much, I'm sure I can speak for Jonathan, we really appreciate your work on this. And I want to echo what Alderman Brown said, that the lane changes is something that people talk to us about all the time, is they really feel like that. And I agree, will improve the flow of traffic. And earlier, we actually already allocated money for that should be more than adequate from some negotiated fees with with
developers.
Yeah. So I think we have financially that should be covered. And anything that Jonathan, I'll speak for you again, anything that we could do to help you find a vendor, I mean, I think we would be willing to mine the ore needed for the signs. Just anything that we can do to get that to happen sooner, we would be willing to do. But we really appreciate that you've worked this out for us.
Thank you. Yes, I'll check back in tomorrow and see if I can't get some.
Thank you.
Some on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this item? If not, Sarah, let's move to the next one, item 4.
We have a stop 30 and Drake's Creek intersection. So this one, also the reevaluation of the environmental document was submitted to TDOT for consideration. And once that is approved, we'll be able to move forward with right-of-way acquisition on this project as well.
This is to move to raise the elevation of that intersection so that it doesn't flood and prevent emergency for getting in and out of this area.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Number 5.
All right, we have the signal timing optimization program. So this project is going to be installing new vehicle radar detection. Currently, we have in 31 of our intersections. We currently have loop detectors, and many of them are faulty, which I'm sure many realize. And this project will also provide optimization of signal timing. So this is where our coordinated signal timings will come from, is this project. So this one is really exciting for me. It's going to yield significant and notable improvements in our transportation system through the city. So because of our first traffic signal project, where we have been hung up because of those 8 or 9 locations where they saw certain equipment outside of right-of-way or easements, this project has encountered a little bit of a snag as well, because it will utilize much of the same equipment. And so we are going through the environmental process now. Well, because of the flags that have been thrown in the first project, they have required our consultant to provide preliminary design plans through the environmental process, which is a little bit different. So they are working on finalizing those. They contacted me this last week, actually, and they have a couple of concerns in addition to the surveyed locations. So I'll be working through that with them this week to try and provide them easements. Hopefully they are in place. And then they will resubmit to TDOT for NEPA, and then we'll have environmental approval. But the benefit of that is once we have environmental approval, we will also be significantly through the process of preliminary design as well. So
You have an estimated cost of this project?
This project.
That's okay.
I want to say $2 million. Not positive on that number. I believe $2 million.
$2 million?
I believe.
And is this a sharing cost?
This is a CMAQ project also, so it's 100% funded through the grant.
I like to hear 100%.
I think it's 2.215.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Keith.
Okay.
Thank you, Keith. All right, any questions on this? If not, number 6, the center point traffic signal.
Okay. This one is in design now. The consultant, it has a June 9th turn-in date for the design. And then it should have a letting scheduled, I'm going to guess early next year, but possibly this fall, maybe.
And where exactly is this on Center Point? I should know this, but where is this on Center Point Road?
It's
what intersection?
The off ramp in Caldwell, but it's going to be for the southern off ramp.
Okay.
Yes, and actually, in talking with TDOT, I have requested they do a coordinated timing plan to coordinate those 3 since they're so close. So they'll be including those other 2 intersections.
Okay, and that's 100% our cost?
No. 50-50.
50-50,
Yeah.
thank you.
And we've already
our
allocated the funds for it.
Okay, great, thank you. I knew Chairman Cunningham would know about that one. Number 7, Rockland Road, Ward 1, Chairman Skidmore.
Yes. So Rockland Road, we advertised for, we put out an RFQ for design consultants, and we have shortlisted 3 firms, and they will be submitting, actually the date for their proposals is next Friday, the 12th. And so for phase 2, so we will review those and hopefully select someone in the coming weeks and get started.
And this is what is it, 80-20 or 90-10 portion of cost?
I apologize. I'm not certain of the percentage. I can look it up.
80-20.
It's 80-20.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Great, thank you. And
You know the story.
and yeah, and Walton Ferry and Old Shackle, we are seeing some action there. Sarah, give us some good news on this
Yeah,
one.
that one's exciting. So yeah, so as you've seen, they've torn down the bank. They should be starting on the gas stations soon. It is currently scheduled for a fall letting through TDOT, and construction anticipated to start in the spring of 2022. So Marshall did notate here that approximately 1.5 million will be requested in the budget for the city's portion of the project's total cost.
Any questions? Okay, and then under item C, and I'm trying to hurry because it's going probably, I'll try to run these meetings a little more efficient in the future. But item C are some mini capital projects that Marshall wanted this committee to review and discuss for possible inclusion in this next year's budget. So Sarah, do you want to kind of go through those? The first one is the Sanders Ferry Widening and Safety Project. I think that's
Yes,
Chairman Campbell's ward. Okay.
Yes, so there have been multiple concerns about the safety on Sanders Ferry, particularly where we have guardrail very close, where it's adjacent to the lake. And so because of that, we have looked at a lot of those locations, done a preliminary estimate to widen those locations approximately 4 to 6 feet on each side, just depending on location and what was necessary. And the cost estimate preliminary is $600,000. So Marshall would like to put the budget for that amount.
Okay. And any questions on that item? Number 2, Durham Farms Roundabout.
Yes, so we do have money already from Durham Farms for the route, which is another great project. So I believe we currently have approximately $600,000. It's anticipated that will not be enough. That will carry us through full design, but that may not be enough to carry us through construction. Marshall believes it would actually be closer to approximately $1 million, maybe less, but possibly total project cost. So he would like to put in an additional $400,000 into the budget for the roundabout, make sure that we can complete it. And then as more fees come in from Durham Farms and those other subdivisions in the area, we may be able to decrease that amount in the budget, but just to make sure we can construct it.
Yeah, and not only will that help with the traffic flow, I think for wards 6 and 5 in that area, but as Durham Park, the rugby fields get developed and more traffic out there, there's going to be even more and more traffic with that park. So okay, the roundabout. I think any questions about that item? Number 3, Sarah. Oh, I'm sorry, Steve. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Chairman Brown.
Thank you. On the roundabout, I know when we have 600,000 banked, right? From that already, and that was supposed to be the approximate cost when we originally started talking about this. And now Marshall believes it could be closer to $1 million. And I know Marshall's not here to answer that, and it's probably not fair to even ask you, but you're the ones here. How did we come up with an extra $400,000 to complete that? And if you don't know, just say, I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm not sure.
I would like, if you would pass that on though to your boss, I would like that answer, how we just come up with that extra 400K.
I'll provide an email response to the other question to everyone.
Yeah, I think Keith Free, Keith, you were involved in that in the planning of Durham. You have any comments?
Yeah, I think the 600,000 was, we gave all those per lot fees, and it's not just from Durham, it's from Fountain Brook and everything, all the other things that are back there. And so Marshall had an amount of per lot fees that we already got. As you know, there's still a lot of construction to happen back in there, but I think 600,000 was all that he had, at the time. But I think he was thinking it was going to be about $1 million, and so then he needed the 400,000 to go ahead and start moving forward with the project. But there'll be more money coming for the per lot fees from Durham Farms and from the other neighborhoods out there. It's just going to be over the next 5 or 6 years. But the challenge is we need to go ahead and move forward in constructing the roundabout, because if we waited, 5 or 6 years until enough money came in, then of course the traffic problems out there are going to be, extremely significant. Plus the cost will go up as well.
Thanks, Keith. Thank you, Sarah. I hate to put you on the spot, but
No problem.
you do a good job on the spot. You do.
Great. Sarah, number 3.
All right. Our Creek Road and Shackle intersection improvements. For those of you out in that ward, I'm sure you hear quite a bit about it. I do. So we would like to construct turn lanes on all approaches and install a traffic signal. And the approximate estimation on that is $575,000.
Will the state help us any on that cost?
Possibly.
Okay.
So the city and the county previously were in cooperation on, it was this location as well as Stop 30 and New Shackle. And we ended up in the signal at, well, I don't know if the state did or we did. I wasn't here for that. I apologize. But the signal was put in already at Stop 30 and New Shackle. And so the county has a line item in the TIP for improvements to both of the intersections. And I believe it's right around 100,000 or 500,000 for the both of the intersections. And so Marshall and I had been talking with the county about trying to move that money in the TIP under the city where we can manage the project and make the improvements to Drake's Creek and New Shackle. To make it a little safer to try and turn in on the Drake's Creek and out, of course.
Yeah, I agree. I drive that road every day, and I've been almost hit several times. And there have been several accidents on that road. To me, that is really a safety hazard. And Chief Bush, are you still on the call?
Yes, sir.
Isn't that intersection a problem with the fire department as well? We're talking about Old Drake's Creek and New Shackle.
Yes, so that's why I raised my hand. I was going to reiterate the fact that when this new station gets built, that'll be the one closest to the Shackle Island area that would possibly get us to the Shackle Island area a little bit faster if that road was widened a little bit. We've had discussions of what a steep drop off that is when you turn off Shackle Island. We might drag an apparatus. So adding that turning lane will give us an opportunity to swing a little bit wider as we're going out emergency traffic and give us a little more room to maneuver an apparatus.
Thank you. Any questions regarding this intersection? Number 4, and I think, yeah, number 4, Saundersville Road and Avondale Road. Sarah.
Yes. We would like to construct a right turn lane coming out of Avondale onto Saundersville. There's a lot of, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just agreeing with you. I was picturing that in my mind, like I do all the projects, and then I'm just sorry it blurted out.
This is one that I really feel like would, well, we all do, and Public Works feel like would improve the safety in the area. There are a lot of conflict points there, and providing that right turn lane would, I think, be some of the frustration of the people trying to get out of Avondale. And that project is estimated at $100,000 for that turn lane.
Okay, any questions, comments? And number 5, Anderson Lane, street improvements. That's the, that's for Anderson Park, I guess.
Yet we would like to use the funding for Anderson Park if possible. It could be used for this. But this is for North Anderson southbound to extend the right turn lane back farther, along with some other improvements that we will be making. Well, the developer may be doing that, but there's a median and center that will be closed to, in essence, extend the dedicated left turn. And so we had a small limited scope study done by our on-call traffic consultant, and they recommended extending that right turn lane. And so we would like to do that and then finish adding street along North Anderson.
And Keith, do you know where we stand on Anderson Park when they're going to have a groundbreaking or the progress on that development?
No, I would expect that pretty soon, but I haven't heard from them in a while. But I'm sure they're prepping to start some things out there. But this is, I agree with Sarah. This is much needed. We've got a lot of things going on out there. That Vanderbilt Medical Clinic, and there's just a lot of different things that are going on in that area.
Sarah, do we know what the estimated cost of this improvement would be, and how much has been collected from Anderson Development?
I can say the estimated cost is between $250,000 and $300,000, and most of that is driven by the street lights. To be honest, those are fairly expensive. As far as what we've collected, I do not have the answer to that right now. I can find out and get back to you, or I don't know if Keith has that information or not.
No, I don't have that, but I believe a portion of that, when it was approved, I think was set aside for something particular, and then the balance was probably what Marshall's looking to utilize on this project.
Yeah, do you know, Robert Manning, you know how much has been collected off Anderson Park so far?
Probably nothing so far.
That's correct. We haven't seen anything come in quite yet.
Okay. Chairman Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the Anderson Park funds were earmarked for supplemental paving to replenish the funds for the Indian Lake Boulevard paving we did a year or two ago. I believe that was the conversation we had about 2 years ago regarding the Indian Lake Boulevard paving we did with the Anderson Park funds. So,
I think you're right. I recall that.
That's correct.
That was in Public Works, wasn't it?
yes, sir. Sure was.
Yes.
That's that.
Like $800,000 to do the Indian Lake out there, but it needed it. So I mean,
Yeah.
it is the gateway to our city now. So there you go.
Okay, so committee, let me ask you. Marshall is asking, I guess, for us to give some priority ranking of these projects, and how do y'all think that we should proceed? Because he's wanting to include some of them at least, or maybe all of them, try to in the budget. And I don't know how much budget flexibility we're going to have, Chairman Cunningham. But how do you believe that this committee should proceed in prioritizing the bottom that are listed in C? Chairman Brown?
Here would be just an opinion. There's several things on there, and 2 or 3 of them seem to lean more specifically towards safety issues and flow. So I would be more inclined to rate them from safety issue number 1 on down. If it protects the citizens and makes the flow of traffic go better. We were talking about a right turn lane a minute ago, and 2 or 3 people said, they've been there, done that. So that's just my opinion. Let's look at safety, and it's easier to fund stuff. To me, it's easier for me to vote on funding for removing medians and making turn lanes and putting stoplights up if it improves flow and safety especially. So that's an opinion. Right.
Any other comments? I think that's 2 good criteria to use. Yes, Chairman Cunningham.
Thank you, Chairman Roberson. I agree with the previous Alderman Brown, Chairman Brown. to prioritize based on those criteria, but also kind of take the lowest hanging fruit. Now we have some funding already available for some of these projects. Am I not correct to say that we already have some funding? Sarah?
Yes, we do have some. Yes, ma'am.
So
For,
okay, go ahead.
We do have some funding for Durham Farms, and we will have more money coming in for that from Durham Farms and those other subdivisions in the area. But that may be over the next 4 or 5 years. We do have approximately 600,000 for that now.
Is that the only money that we have available for all 4 of those projects? We just have the availability of funds for just that particular project right now? Or do we have some available funds for other projects?
The only other one that I believe that we have funding for, since they were saying Anderson Park funds have already been allocated back over to for the paving that they did on Indian Boulevard to pay that back. And so Drake's Creek Road and New Shekel, we are working with the county to get that money that they have in the tip put under us. And so if we are successful in that, we'll be able to utilize those funds to move forward with this project.
Okay, because that's one dangerous intersection over there of New Shackle Island. I mean, I take my life in my hands sometimes if I'm trying to make a left over there. It's and I'm a Jersey driver now. So dangerous intersection over there. And then the other area that's I think is a pretty well of a disgrace is Anderson Lane by the Zaxby's area. Is that where you're trying to improve over there? That's a horrible disgrace with the brand new Vanderbilt Medical Center sitting right there. And it's a bit dangerous over there. I agree, but it looks horrible. So those are my comments on that. Thank you, Alderman Roberson.
Chairman Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For safety reasons, I would say Saunders Ferry Road. If you've ever driven down Saunders Ferry, where the lake is on both sides of the road from Moby Dickey's, just Imperial Drive right there. If you go, south, and you head all the way out to the boat dock there, marina. There's spots down through there. It's extremely tight. There's no shoulder, and especially right there at the curb, right there at Creekwood Marina and Market on the right. If you ran off the road there, you're running off into a 4 or 5 foot gully that has a guardrail. And if heaven forbid someone's walking right there, because you just crushed them or cut them in two when there's no other way around it right there at that point. So I realize the $600,000, there's no funding for that. We don't have any developments going on out there on the Saunders Ferry or in that area right now that's going to provide us with some funding for that. But I would like to see us move that forward as we can. I realize we can't do that this year or next year's budget, most likely. I agree. Maybe the Durham Farms roundabout $400,000 we need to put into that to get that completed, because we do have the $600,000 sitting there, and the $100,000 from the county for the Drake Creek issue for the extra lane there. And also, we need to take it one bite at a time. That's why I've started trying to make issues when we have the fees, the $3,500 fee, to put a little of that money aside for each one of these projects, like the underpass. I've asked that, and the mayor asked if we could use some of that money for the signage out there. Sure, why not? I mean, that's part of the process, getting it complete. Let's just move that forward and take small bites at a time as we can out of these projects and keep moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right. Chairman Skidmore, do you have anything to say before we kind of, I want to talk to Paul just a little bit and kind of summarize, but I want to give you a chance. Do you have any comments?
I don't have any comments. Everybody's said about the same thing that we do. I agree with Alderman Brown and Alderman Cunningham that that's where a lot of the money I think we need to focus on, is what they said. But I just would caution also, before we make a commitment to any of these things, let's just see where our budget is and where we're going. I think that's most important at this point. You know, I don't know I have no idea what the estimates are yet, and I'm not sure that the finance department, they may have an idea, but I'm not sure that they really know it right now. But I would just urge caution on, you know, until we have an idea, and then once we find that idea, we should meet again and look at and look at see what we have to fix, because I do believe, and then I'll close. And in closing, I would just say that the projects that are less costly should probably be done more, because we're getting more bang for the dollar, and getting those off the books, because the more we get off the books, the better it looks for the alderman, the better it looks for the taxpayer, because it shows that we're doing, you know, our work as aldermen, and it shows that the taxpayers are getting their money, their bang for the dollar. So that's the only thing that I could say, but other, you know, than say anything else would be futile at this point, I think.
Yeah, and I think trying to come up with a prioritization of this will help the staff and the mayor in their budget process as they develop a budget. So let me throw a proposal out to Paul, and I'll take any comments. I like I'd like for the staff to do a spreadsheet on these projects, on these 5 projects, under 3 categories. First, I would like for the staff to prioritize the safety issue of the 5 projects. And I know it's going to be very subjective, but I think the staff's in the best position to come up with a prioritization based on safety. The second thing is traffic flow. So, you know, which of these 5 projects in order improve the city's traffic flow the most? And then the last category, cost sharing, like the Durham farms. So to know each of these 5 projects, whether they have some cost sharing with the county, with the state, or to kind of give us an idea. I think with that spreadsheet that we can come up with the prioritization of this. And of course, it's all subject to the budget. You know, if we've got money for the budget, then this list will be handy, but we will at least have a plan that the mayor and the staff can look that this is capital projects prioritization based on these categories. Does that seem reasonable, Chairman Brown?
Seems very reasonable, only I would like to add one more thing. And Mr. Skidmore's talked about bang for our buck a minute ago, and I agree. We need to try to spend our money where we can get the biggest return. I think, to me, it would be important to know, I know Sanders Ferry Road's been talked about for years. I have people talk to me about Sanders Ferry Road, and I'm in Ward 4, that's in Ward 2. But it is dangerous. You get off the edge, you're off the edge, and that's pretty well, there's no coming back on. Is there any way, Sarah, that we can get any type of traffic counts on how many car volume, how much volume a day would Sanders Ferry get us the turn lane out off Avondale? You know, we can look at bang for buck there too. I agree, we need to get some things done. We've got other folks that'll be wanting money from all other departments too, but traffic count, I think, Chairman Roberson, if we can add that to it, certainly would help us how to approve or not approve, or give Marshall a better idea what we think should be in his budget.
Yeah, and I would categorize that, Paul, as data analysis. What kind of data that we have, you know, that measures what Chairman Brown talks about. So you have any comments, Paul?
Yes, absolutely. The more information, obviously, that you have, the better decisions you can make. And I think the way I'm hearing the priorities certainly gives you guidance, or at least recommendations from staff. But I'm hearing a combination of of all the boards concerns the safety, the traffic flow, the cost sharing, and obviously the traffic count. So all the comments are coming together. So I think that's certainly reasonable. It's very doable. And I think the staff can put that together and to give the board and this committee some good guidance, because again, like I said in the beginning, the more information you have, the better decisions you can make moving forward. So I certainly concur with that. And I think that's more than reasonable, and would certainly get that in the works to get to you. I think Chairman Campbell had a comment. I see a hand.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Just real quick, accident reports for the last 5 years at those roads or intersections as well. Can we get maybe some information on accidents? Have happened over there?
I think that would be in the data analysis.
Just
Sarah.
making sure though.
Absolutely.
Not just traffic. So
Yeah, I agree. That for sure highlights safety issues.
Sure. Traffic counts.
I would think that they would use, I would think that staff would use those accident reports to come up with your safety prioritizations as well.
And as you know, we do that analysis all the time, and for traffic count and crash analysis. So yes, I think that's a very good suggestion, and to give some good guidance from the staff to the board to make those good decisions.
Okay. Any questions? I see some hands up. Maybe you just hadn't taken them down. Chairman Brown.
I have one comment that's annoying me a bit. Is Miss Locke, you need a battery for your clock.
I know.
Clock stuck at 5
It's decorative.
and you need a battery for your clock. Thank you.
I have to tell you this. When my dad was appointed to the church in Chattanooga, when he went to the pulpit, Chairman Brown, he looked behind him and there was a clock right behind the pulpit. The first thing he did as pastor was take that clock down. So little levity there. Anything else that we need?
I do have one comment if I can add. Oh, go ahead, Chairman Cunningham. I just want to add one comment before we close, but go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to call you Commander, but thank you, Paul. I would like to know, and I know that this is a huge project for us, is a Center Point Road, where we stand on getting on TDOT's schedule for Center Point Road. The whole road needs to be fixed, including not just paving, but it needs to be realigned. There's some hills there that need to be straightened out. And you talk about taking your life in your hands. I have a whole subdivision with about 100 homes on Center Point Road, trying to make a left-hand turn over there, and you have a hill on one side, a curve on the other side, and it's extremely dangerous. It's about, I believe it's about a $13 million project, and we were lobbying to get onto TDOT's schedule for that. And I'd like to know where that stands. And I don't expect you to give me an answer today, tonight, but I want to go on the record as with this committee that this needs to be, we need to get an update with that.
We can certainly follow up with that and get that on the agenda for the next meeting, or get that information to you.
Thank you.
We will definitely follow up with that.
Thank you very much. And that's it. Wonderful meeting. Thank you.
Any other comments by any of the aldermen? It's great to have several of our new aldermen with us tonight. And again, I'm sorry that it's taken so long, but we had a lot to cover. And I will be calling the next meeting once the staff comes up with this spreadsheet and flush out a little more about some of the other items that we discussed tonight. So any other new business before Paul?
I just want to make a comment before we close. So go ahead. I just want to.
Well, I'm ready to close her up. So
okay. The only thing I wanted to add is I really wanted to recognize Sarah. This is her first time, and I think she did an outstanding job. So I just wanted to certainly recognize her for that being in that hot seat tonight. So I think she did good. So I just wanted to recognize her for that in front of the group, because I think she did do a good job. And that's part of the
job.
development process.
Yeah.
She did a great job on being in the hot seat, and I'll spring for the battery. I'll drop it by City Hall.
Yeah, I've got that on the agenda.
At least it's right two times a day.
I've got that on the list to get some batteries issued. There you go.
All right, and
Thank you. That's
committee
all I have.
members, if you have an item that you would like to be put on a future agenda, please email those items to me that we can make sure that they're included on future items. And I'll do my best to try to keep the meetings within an hour going forward. But thank you, and I'm ready for a motion to adjourn if there's no other business.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Chairman Brown,
Aye.
Chairman Cunningham,
Aye.
Chairman Campbell,
Aye.
Chairman Skidmore,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So we are adjourned. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Bradley, for being here as well.
Thank you, staff. Thank you,
And
Sarah.
Scotty.
Thank you, Paul.
Bye.
Thank you and have a good night. Thank you.
Same to all. Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year.